Hey y'all, it's Lacey. It's been a while. I have not had much time to sit down and film anything for I think about a month. I think last month's reading wrap up was the last video that I posted. So anyway, I finally found some time to sit down and go over what I read in August. So in the month of August, I finished 7 books. Had no DNFs, which is good. I'm trying to not have as many DNFs and, finish books, even if I'm not quite feeling them, still trying to give them a chance. But anyway, so no DNFs in August. I finished 5 audiobooks and 2 physical books. The first book that I finished was an audiobook called Royally Matched by Emma Chase. This is the second book in the Royal series by Emma Chase. The first one was Royally Screwed that I think I read in July. So this is the second one. This follows Henry, who is the prince of his country. He's the heir to the throne. He's the brother of the character in the first book. So this one follows Henry. He's the heir. He's going to be king one day, and he really wasn't expecting to be king because he's the second born. And you find out how he becomes the heir to the throne in the first book. But anyway, so it's following him. He's, like I said, he wasn't expecting to be king one day, but now he is, and he's dealing with that. It's approached to be a part of like a bachelor type show. It's like, basically it's like The Bachelor but the royal edition. So it involves like him and a bunch of girls and like this whole competition thing. Well, one of the girls is, I think her name's Penelope. Well, she can't be a part of the show unless her sister comes along with her to monitor her and take care of her. Her sister's name is Sarah. So basically, Henry and Sarah, who's not part of the show, she's just there to be with her sister, begin a relationship and fall in love and all this stuff. I mean, no spoilers. Everybody knows what's going to happen in this book. I really liked it. I liked the first one. The second one was just as good. I gave it 4 stars. It was funny. It was enjoyable. It was romantic. It wasn't it still had some steamy sex scenes in it, but not as many I felt like that were in the first book. And it does still have some explicit language and scenes. So if that's not something that you're into, maybe this wouldn't be for you, but it's not horrible. But it was funny. Like I said, it's romantic. It very enjoyable. I did take off a star, because the first one I gave 5 stars to. This one I just gave 4 because the ending kind of dragged out just a little bit. So I feel like it could have ended a little bit sooner and been perfect, but it dragged out just a little bit, and what was at the ending didn't really, I feel like, add much to the story. So yeah, that one was really good. The second one that I finished was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was a buddy read that I did with Angie from Literary Labors and Tia from Tia and All the Books. We read this near the beginning of the month and really liked it. I had a really good time reading this with them. This is kind of and I know it's been all over BookTube, so I think most people know what it's about, but this is like a kind of a hate to love relationship. There's also a bit of the hate is based on maybe some misinformation, misunderstanding kind of thing, like miscommunication stuff. So it follows Olive, and I think his name is Ethan. Olive's twin sister is getting married to Ethan's brother, and at the wedding, because of, I think Olive has a allergy to shellfish, and Ethan just doesn't like to eat on buffets. Neither one of them eats the wedding food, so they're the only ones who don't get sick. And Olive's sister won a honeymoon, like all expense paid, you know, non-refundable, non-transferable, all that stuff. So she has to get Olive and Ethan, since they're the only well people, they have to take the honeymoon for them so they don't lose out on this trip. So, you know, Olive and Ethan take this trip, have to, you know, spend the week together in Hawaii, and, you know, then it just goes from there. And there's some misunderstandings that happen where they end up having to pretend that they are married and, you know, in an actual relationship, and all this stuff. And then at the end, you kind of find out why it is that they hate each other and where it came from. And I really wasn't expecting that part of the story. So that was, that didn't, sometimes, you know, you can figure these things out and all this stuff. That I didn't figure out. And I was surprised that that's where the story went. And overall, I think I gave this 4 stars, and I felt it was really easy to read. This is actually the first Christina Lauren book that I've physically read. I've usually listened to them on audiobooks, which I think I would like to go back and listen to this one on audiobook one day. But it was a very quick read. It was enjoyable. Like I said, I had a great time reading it with those 2 ladies, and I think I would revisit this again one day. Okay, moving on. The third book that I finished was another audiobook called The Solomon Curse by Clive Cussler with Russell Blake. This is a Sam and Remy Fargo series, a book in that series. And it's one of those books that, like, it's by Clive Cussler, but they always have, there's like a different author for each book, I think. It's that type of thing. So this one follows Sam and Remy. They're in the Solomon Islands. They've been called in by a friend of theirs to look at something that they've found on an expedition. Sam and Remy Fargo are like known as treasure hunters. And they've gone all over the world in several books and found lost treasure and solved historical mysteries and that type of thing. So this one, they're in the Solomon Islands, and it's like a sunken city, and they're looking into it. I've enjoyed all the other ones that I've read. This one I did not like as much. There was just something different about it. It wasn't as exciting as the others. Usually the other books, they're like globe hopping and, you know, following clues to other places to, you know, find these treasures. This one, they were in the same place pretty much the entire time, and it wasn't a lot of like treasure hunting. There was a lot of local political upheaval in this book that just wasn't interesting. And I felt like the characters themselves, the main characters, Sam and Remy, did not act in character like I remember them from other books. They seemed to be, you know, this author wrote them in a way that they just didn't seem familiar to me and act familiar. So I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I did not enjoy it as much as the other ones. There are some other books in this series that I do plan on reading or listening to. So we'll see how the rest of them are. Okay, moving on. The next book that I finished finally was Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I finally finished this book. I started this book back in, I want to say like March or April, and I did sit it down for a while. So there was a good span of time where I wasn't even reading this, but I wanted to finish it in July. I was participating in this read-along, but I didn't. I ended up not finishing it, so I was determined to finish it in August, and I finally did. It's really good. I'm so glad that I read it. It's easy to read. You know, it's based in the 1100s, but it's not written, you know, like it is. It reads very easy. Ken Follett has a very easy reading style. And, you know, a lot of people talk about how it's basically about the building of a cathedral, which it is, but that didn't play as big of a part as I thought it was. I mean, yes, it a lot of the story does center around that, but it's more in the, a lot of times it's more in the background. It's about all the church politics, and you know, and there's a horrible bad guy in this book that just does horrible things, and you know, and it spans the course of like 40 years. So there's a lot that happens in this book, and it's hard to explain everything that happens. I mean, it starts out, you're following a guy named Tom who is a builder, and his goal in life is to build a cathedral. And you know, him and his family fall on hard times, and are, you know, trying to find work, and eventually he comes to Kingsbridge, and you know, something happens to the church there, and he's able to make up a plan to build a new cathedral. And so they settle there. Then you have Prior Philip, who is like the religious leader in this area. He's like the strong moral center. He always wants to do the right thing. He's, you know, devoted to the church and doing what's right. We're always like backstabbing him and, you know, doing crooked things to push their agendas, when all he wants to do is build a beautiful church and, you know, serve God. And then there's Aliena, who is the girl. She has some tragic things happen to her, but she perseveres and, you know, gets knocked down a couple of times, but gets back up, and she's like a strong character, you know, female character, and, you know, she's like really smart for the time period that this is based in. And then there's, you know, like I said, there's politics, and there's, you know, crime and horrible evil characters, and there's a love story, and you know, there's just so much that happens in this book, but it's really good. And I, you know, if you have the time to sit down and read it, and you know, maybe just read it a little bit at a time and stretch it out over a couple of months, it's really worth it. I definitely would recommend this. The next book that I finished was an audiobook called The Last, a novel by Hannah Jameson. This I did not like. I gave it 1 star. It was super slow. I think I called it a snooze fest. And I really wish I had DNF'd this one, but I didn't. I kept waiting for it to get better, and it just never did. This book follows a guy, I think his name was John. In the beginning of the book, he's in Switzerland on business at a hotel, and nuclear bombs get dropped all over the world. Like people are at war with each other, and basically the world, all the major cities get nuked. So it's kind of like a Walking Dead situation where society has collapsed a little bit, and him and a group of people are at this hotel, and they, you know, are kind of like stuck there, and they, you know, no communications. They don't know what's going on in the outside world. And then while they're there, a body turns up, and, you know, he wants to know who committed this crime, and who this person was. It was a little girl, actually, and, you know, he's trying to figure out like who did it, who she is, all this stuff. So you think it's going to be like a mystery in this kind of apocalyptic type setting, but it just kind of falls flat. It really goes nowhere. And there were so many questions that I had about, you know, like, why didn't they venture out more to see what was out there? You know, I know it was dangerous, but the characters were just kind of one-dimensional. There were really no likable characters in this story. Um, it was just very boring, and I just felt like it was advertised to me as being something that it wasn't. I was expecting like kind of a murder mystery kind of thing in this unusual setting, but all that fell flat and it just really didn't go anywhere and it was just boring. I do not recommend. Um, okay, the sixth book that I finished was another audiobook going back. So after I finished Pillars of the Earth, I had absolutely no energy to pick up any more physical books in the month of August. So the rest of these are audiobooks. I just could not get in the mood for anything after finally finishing this big chunker of a book. So, okay, back to regularly scheduled programming. Number 6 was an audiobook called Royally Endowed by Emma Chase. This was the third book in the Royal series. This was my favorite of the series. I gave it 5 stars. This follows Ellie. I almost forgot her name. Ellie and Logan. Ellie is the sister of Olivia from the first book. Logan is a royal bodyguard who was kind of assigned to Ellie after some events in the first book, and it covers about a span of 5 years because she's like a older teenager when they meet. He's like early 20s. And so they developed this friendship over the years of, him protecting her, him just kind of being there, and, them being friends. And eventually, as they become, she becomes an adult, and she's in his country with her sister, who's having a baby, spoiler, they begin their relationship. And, it's not exactly forbidden, but because of his position, it's not exactly encouraged either. And, it was such a fun book to read and follow their relationship. And it was kind of gave me the feels of when, like when you were younger and you had a crush on somebody and it was like a new relationship, and like when you were a teenager and you had like a relationship with someone and it was real new and you had all the like little butterflies and stuff. That's the kind of feels that it gave me. It was super cute. And I mean, it had its moments. It had, like, again, these books have explicit language and sex scenes in them, so be warned of that. But it was just super fun, and just the back and forth between them, and their relationship and their friendship. It was so fun to listen to, and I would definitely recommend it if you're into those types of romance books. And I hate to see the series end, but this, like I said, by far was my favorite of the series. Gave it 5 stars. Very fun book. Loved it. Okay, number 7, the last book that I finished was an audiobook called Confessions, a novel by Kanai Minato. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. It was interesting. It's hard to describe. The book is made up of different stories from different points of view revolving around the death of a child. It starts off with the teacher whose child it was that died, and she is confronting her class where there are 2 students in this class who are responsible for the death of her child. So she's confronting the class and telling, how this happened, and letting these 2 students know, not calling them out by names, but letting them know that she knows what they did. And then the next chapter is from a different point of view from a student. So it's like each chapter is a different point of view from a different person that was either like directly or indirectly involved in the death of this child. And like I said, it was interesting. It's hard. It's not a thriller in the traditional sense. I've seen some people refer to it as horror, but I didn't get that vibe from it. And I didn't really get thriller either. It was a very slow burn. but I will say that in each chapter from each person, they each make a confession about something that is either like involved the crime or involved a person involved in the crime. So there's always like some sort of confession or shocker in each chapter. And they were pretty predictable or not very shocking. But the ending, the last little shocking confession, that surprised me. I actually was not expecting it. Usually I can figure these things out. I've listened to and read so many thrillers over the years that, you know, they kind of have a formula to them, and you can kind of predict and figure out what's going to happen. That I didn't see coming. So that was interesting. Now, if you like the slow burn kind of thing, you might want to check it out. It wasn't my favorite. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars just because it was interesting. It's not like something that I've ever read before. So, you know, maybe I could recommend it if you like the slow burn type of book, that, you know, it's not gonna throw like twists and turns and thrills at you, but it's gonna maybe give you some chills here and there. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like I said, it was just very interesting. So anyway, those are all the books that I finished in the month of August. I cannot believe that it's already September. It's just crazy. So yeah, that's it. I'm glad I was finally able to sit down. I hope I didn't like rattle these off too quickly, because sometimes I just like have the thoughts in my head and I feel like I can't like get them out coherently and describe what the books are about, and, you know, let people know what they're about so they might want to read them. I don't know. I feel like I ramble a little bit in like an incoherent way. But anyway, so yeah, that was it. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in another video, hopefully sooner rather than later. I'll try not to be so long in posting, but, you know, life. So, all right, I'll see y'all later.